Copenhagen, a city of bikes, colourful buildings and waterfronts that look like a postcard. But look a little closer and you'll see something unexpected. Knitting. Knitting here isn't hidden, it's visible and it's social. So why is everyone knitting in Copenhagen? I spent 2 weeks living like a local to find out. Knitting has always been important in Denmark. Hand knitting was widespread as woolen goods were essential in the colder climate. Many other countries have a similar knitting history, but a less visible knitting community today. Having grown up in England, I could count on one hand the times I've seen people knitting in public. But in Copenhagen, I noticed it every day. In parks, in cafes, on public transport. So why is knitting still so popular in Copenhagen? Hygge is a Danish concept centred on coziness, comfort, and enjoying the simple pleasures of everyday life. Hygge seems to shape how people approach knitting. The craft is not just a hobby, but a way to slow down, be present, and create moments of peace. The city makes space for Hygge. The streets are calm and walkable, with wide pavements and squares that invite you to pause. Cafes spill onto the street, encouraging long afternoons spent with coffee, conversation, or a pair of needles. Copenhagen's cycling culture, quiet, clean and free of pollution, makes everyday life feel unhurried and peaceful. Canals and waterfronts create quiet spaces for reflection, and parks dot the city, offering benches where knitters can settle and watch the world go by. In Copenhagen, the shapes, colours and character of the city naturally feed into knitting and design. The cobbled streets, roof tiles and old wood create texture that inspires cables and stitch patterns. The painted buildings show up in yarn palettes, while decorative features influence motifs. It's no coincidence that many of my favourite pattern designers are based here. Copenhagen is home to Petiteknit, who is one of the most popular knitwear designers in the world. Her minimalist designs, clear instructions and huge online following have encouraged countless knitters to cast on new projects. Other designers I love, Anne Wenzel, My Favourite Things Knitwear, Lay Knit, Other Loops and Pernille Larsen are all based in Denmark too. Even if you don't realise it, there's a good chance you've knit something from a Danish designer. Their patterns are often minimalist, practical and timeless, reflecting the popular Scandinavian style. The yarn in Copenhagen tells a story too. Knitting for Olive, a local brand, has become a global favourite. Their yarns are soft, ethically sourced, sustainable, and dyed in colours that feel inspired by the city. I loved looking at these yarns in person, getting a feel for the fibres, and I couldn't resist picking up a few skeins for myself. Then there are the other yarn brands, Kamarosa, Gepard Garn, Isaya, Hjelholt Garn and Filkalana, all based in Denmark. Having these yarn companies nearby has a huge impact on knitters here. I found that most of the yarn shops in the city carried many of these local brands. In Copenhagen, there are so many yarn shops. I actually took a solo trip here last year just to go yarn shopping. I arrived with an almost empty suitcase and left with enough yarn to last maybe a year. Every yarn shop I went in was so busy, with people happily choosing yarn, comparing fibres, or chatting with staff about projects. This makes knitting feel normal, everyday and accessible. Over the past few months, I've built up a wish list of yarn I've been searching for. I've wandered into yarn shops in Scotland and Norway, often leaving empty-handed. But in Copenhagen, I've been able to find everything I've been looking for. I found the perfect shade of mohair for a shawl to match a wedding dress, and the exact weight of cashmere yarn for a light winter scarf. What establishes Copenhagen as a hub for knitting is the ability to buy local, from Danish pattern designers, Danish yarn brands and local shops. Every purchase feeds back into the knitting community in Copenhagen, allowing designers to keep creating, yarn producers to keep growing, and shops to remain busy. During my stay, I also went to a yarn festival called Pakhusstrik. This festival celebrates yarn, designers, and knitting traditions from Denmark, Greenland, the Faroe Islands, and Iceland. Attending a yarn festival is always so much fun. It's so exciting being gathered with many people who all share a love for the same craft. Even my boyfriend got influenced by the knitting buzz this weekend, and he asked me to teach him how to knit. We sat outside the festival at the waterfront, surrounded by many other knitters, and we knitted together. He actually picked it up very quickly, and I joked that now he can knit me jumpers. Seeing knitters come together to share ideas and celebrate knitting gave me a real sense of just how alive and connected Copenhagen's knitting scene really is. I've been travelling around Europe for the past 5 months, and I've been looking for knitting groups along the way. As much as I love travelling, it can sometimes feel a bit lonely. I'm not often in a place long enough to build friendships, and it can be tricky to find common ground while living on the move. I've really missed the simple joy of sitting with others, sharing stories, and feeling part of a community. But in Copenhagen, I was so happy to discover a few knitting groups I could join. I chose one in particular because it combined 2 things I love: going for a cold swim and a community that embraces not just knitting but other crafts too. Knitting turned out to be the perfect common ground. It didn't matter where I was from or how long I'd be staying, we could still sit together with our projects and chat. It's pretty amazing that Copenhagen has such accessible knitting communities, and it reminded me how enjoyable and important it is to connect with others. One evening, as I waited for my train home after meeting with the group, I was finishing a hand-knit sweater. A kind elderly lady stopped to compliment my work. I looked up to see her wearing a beautiful hand-knit shawl. We chatted about the colours and patterns, and she recognised that I was binding off the Italian way. In that moment, knitting became a language of its own. I experienced how knitting can create connections, spark conversations, and form friendships, and I noticed these quiet encounters happening all around Copenhagen. After 2 weeks in Copenhagen, I realised knitting is far more than a hobby here. It's history kept alive, it's community built among friends and strangers, it's design shaping fashion and inspiring knitters around the world, and it's visible everywhere. So why is everyone knitting in Copenhagen? Because here, knitting is a part of everyday life. It's part of the city, and once you've spent time here, it's hard not to pick up the needles yourself.